This week we've continued our work on the exterior walls, and with Christmas fast approaching, we've been in a bit of a race to see how much we can complete before a holiday break. And with one mason on each wall, it's felt a bit like a race between the work on the front and the side. But rebuilding old stone walls is neither a fast or easy process. It is, however, a pleasure to watch two experts delivering their work, whatever the weather. And on the first morning, the clouds and rain in the air were the sort of weather that was forecast for the whole week, which made it pretty dark when I was opening up and when the team arrived. But they quickly got into their work, Haggy starting work on filling in the original temporary opening, first by chipping out the old mortar ramp, and Miguel got set up for filling in the lower opening to the cube structure from the outside. With the rain starting to get heavier, temporary covers were set up on both walls. And with these in place, the work continued without rain delays. Having cleared the old mortar, Haggy now relayed some new mortar for a base level of new stones for this section. Enric the boss was on site for a check-in. And after a mid-morning break indoors from the wind and rain, the team got back to work. With stones now being added to both walls, albeit to openings that were really quite different. I checked some measures for work on this wall later in the week. And then I followed Haggy's progress as he filled in the middle of the new wall across the opening, using the same type of bricks already around the edge. With the rubble around the sidewall building up, I headed out to lower its level so that we could remove more of the cube wall more easily later on. And yes, for once, I would have liked to have had a machine to help. The second day started with brighter sky, but there was a lot of mist and low cloud around that would move around a lot through the day, although thankfully with no more rain. And when the team were on site, they got set up on their respective walls. This time, with Miguel needing to work from the inside and needing a clearer space so that he could fill in the other side of the lower opening to the cube. While Haggy got back to chipping out more of the wall around the old opening so that he could better integrate the new stones that he would be putting in that day. With Miguel working inside, I was able to return to the cube structure to take down some more of its walls. Just before the mid-morning break, Enric was back on site to check on progress. While the machines are off for the mid-morning break, I thought I'd talk a bit about the work we're doing on this cube structure and explain why I am taking it down and the approach that we're taking to doing that work. As I've written in some replies to comments in the last couple of videos about the work we're doing on the cube structure, I did look at various ways in which we might be able to incorporate the structure and its space into the design of the building. But because of its position on the corner of these rooms, it was always going to be very fiddly to organise the spaces on the rooms on the other side to be able to get the access. And for what might not have been that much extra value, we were then going to have to do a lot of repair work to the walls, because if you see when we've been doing the work, it's not in the best of conditions. And that has determined the approach that we're taking now for taking it down. And there are 2 or 3 aspects to the structure that have influenced its condition and the approach we're taking. And the first is that the cube structure was definitely added on later and was not that well integrated to the main wall. On the left-hand side, it's been very easy to take down because hardly any of the stones were actually linked into the main wall. On the right-hand side, there is a little bit of integration, and that actually makes it more difficult for us to know exactly how best to take it down without destabilizing the corner. And one of the reasons for that approach of it not being fully integrated is that it looks, but we still got to confirm that when we take off the final part, but it looks like that side has actually got a curved wall similar to over there. And therefore, to create a corner from it, there were lots of stones just added in without being fully integrated. So we're going to have to slowly unpick those in our next bit of work and build some stones that will integrate it better into the corner. And then the final part obviously is that the openings were there, and you could have seen when we put the props in there that they weren't the strongest, and that some of the old wooden beams that were holding it up were getting quite rotten. So we wanted to fill it in first to give that part of the wall some extra structure before we tackle this corner, which is going to be more tricky. After the break, we all continued with our separate tasks. With Photo continuing to pick out better stones for the other two to use. With the cube walls down to the rubble level, I now needed to clear away more from around the wall edges. With the opening on the inside now filled in, Miguel started to rearrange the scaffolding for his next work on the wall outside. With the scaffolding rearranged, Miguel now checked out the edge of the main wall and started to pick out cornerstones that could be used for rebuilding it, sometimes cutting certain stones into appropriate sizes. The next day, the mist was still around and it was another dark morning. To start with, Miguel organized the cornerstones he wanted to use, and Photo made his first batch of mortar for the day. Haggy then arrived separately, having picked up some new concrete beams and some other materials. With the materials unloaded, Miguel was back to working on the sidewall edge. And Haggy got ready for some work on the new opening that he would start after helping to get the first new cornerstones onto the sidewall edge. Haggy then started his work on creating a temporary frame for the new opening for holding the doors we wanted to move across. I was cleaning up some old bricks for possible use by Miguel on the sidewall edge, and Miguel moved his repair work steadily upwards. And we all continued with these tasks for the next hour or so. In the afternoon, I headed back to the forest edge to break up and tidy up more of the branches I had cut down. While I'm down here in the wood area, breaking up some of the cuttings from a couple of weeks ago, I thought I'd show you what this forest looks like up close. As you can see, there's quite a lot of smallish trees in here, but the actual ground is pretty clear. I think because it gets so dark and this hill is actually slightly north facing. But to walk around it, it's always useful to have the machete with me to cut up some of the branches. And in the future, maybe I'll take a few more of these trees out and plant some of the type of trees that I would like to see down here. But that's very much for the future. Before heading back to the house for the end of the day. Day 4 started clearer and brighter, and when the team arrived, they returned to their respective tasks. During a break to the work to admire the mist on the horizon, I caught a glimpse of 2 birds heading towards us, which I think were cormorants, but I've not seen them fly past the house like this before. With work progressing well on both walls, I headed back to the trees for another short session of tidying up the cuttings. And when I returned to the house, the mist was starting to fill up the valley in front and close in around the house. I added some bricks to the new temporary door frame to make it more secure and to block out wind and rain. I was then briefly back to clearing the cube wall before being called to give my input to Haggy about the measurements for a window in the opening. With the initial layers of stone in place, Haggy was now starting to build up the edges for the new window with bricks that will be given a mortar finish much later on. And towards the end of the day, Miguel and I started to carefully take down the final side of the cube structure. The last morning of the week was another dark one, and I needed a bit more light to see what I was doing while opening up. And at the start of the day, Haggy also needed more light, as he chipped out more of the old opening edges so that he could better integrate the stones he was now adding. With the three of them set up, I was back to the trees for a hopefully final tidy up before the Christmas break. After the morning break, I was back to the cube to remove more of the remaining cube wall, being careful not to pick out any stones integrated with the main wall edge. Miguel had now rebuilt the edge up to a point where the existing stones were better integrated and looked stable enough not to need rebuilding, but he now needed to look at the lower section, which was probably going to be a lot more complicated. And we now needed to clear more space around the base, so Fodo and I started by picking out better stones for reusing elsewhere. And then I moved on to looking for more potential cornerstones for Miguel, including some near the tile zone that I had somewhat forgotten about. Haggy had now finished the initial brick edges for the window and was ready for putting the exterior beam in place. With the beam in, Haggy now fixed it in place with mortar and stones around its edge. Miguel started his investigation of the work that would be needed lower down on the side wall, and Fodo put to use some of the leftover mortar from the day. And that is the end of work for this week, during which Miguel has patiently transformed this sidewall. First by filling in the lower opening to the cube, and then carefully removing all of the loose stones from the edge, and then rebuilding it with various cornerstones that we've taken out of various walls during this year. While on the front wall, Haggy has started to transform the look of this lower right hand side, filling in the old opening and moving the doors across to the new opening. Then building up from the base with stones and creating the edge of the new window, where there will be a bit more work on the first 2 days of next week, and which I'll include in a short video that I'll post during our Christmas break. So please do tune in next week for a final update of the year.